welcome to another episode of the Old Paratrooper Podcast. And today's guest, I'm joined with former professional boxer, former model, and current actor, Mr. Gary Stretch. Hi, Gary. How you doing?
How are you doing, Vince?
I'm very, very well, thank you. Thank you very much for agreeing to come in on the podcast. I know you're a busy man. Currently in Bulgaria, is that right?
Correct. In Bulgaria, just finished a little film called The Wheels of Heaven with Mickey Rourke. And actor Jeff Bell, you probably know him, an English guy, did The Business and Green Street. He's done a lot of stuff. Good actor. One of my best mates. So me, Bell, Mickey, and a couple of other people. Yeah, we just wrapped it, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I kind of, he's messaged me back, actually, Jeff Bell, because he's been recently in the, I think, Libertines video. Is that right? Music video.
Don't know. I talked to him. He was in Iceland doing a project the other day. He called me from the fucking snow, and he's over there. So yeah, hopefully I'm going to get back to England. I said I was going to come and see you, and I'll probably go and see Jeff too when I get back. Spend a few days with him. Yeah, good boy.
Awesome. So what I try and do with like a lot of the podcasts I do is I kind of touch briefly on you growing up and, you know, how your school life and stuff like that. And then we kind of move from there. So I understand that you grew up in St. Helens. Is that right?
Yeah, a little town between Liverpool and Manchester called St. Helens. Yeah, little industrial town, famous for Pilkington's glass, big glass company. And yeah, very, very small, industrial little town. Yeah.
School, what was you like at school? Did you enjoy school?
Nightmare.
Really?
My mother and father divorced when I was young. I was a pretty shy kid, and I think that was the start of me becoming a bit of a troubled child, and I was probably screaming for attention. And I started getting into fights at school and becoming a little bit difficult. And then after one particular incident, they sent me home, and my dad, who was a plumber, he was also a motorcycle racer. He was one of the chaps. They sent me home, and they said that he had to come in and see him, and he didn't. He was too busy making a living, raising 3 boys. So I went to work with him for a week on the plumbing, and eventually the headmaster came to the house. And I remember sitting on the steps of the house listening to him talking, and he said he's a good boy, but he's angry and blah, blah, blah. And we need to introduce him to a newfound friend named Discipline. And the idea was a boxing gym. He had a friend, a man called Albert Freeman, who it was the Low House boxing gym. And they said I had to go there like 3-4 nights a week, of which I said I'm not going to do. It's funny because if they would have asked me, I would have loved to do it. But because I was told I had to, I was like, not happening. So my dad used to drag me there. And I spent like almost a year going to this gym, and I wouldn't do a thing. Didn't hit a bag, never did a fucking thing. And the first day when I went, and my dad said, come on, you got to do it. I said, not doing it. And he gave me a little crack round the ear, and the trainer said, no, leave him with me. So my dad left me. He used to pick me up 4 nights a week. I'd never done a thing. And he'd say to the trainer, how was my boy today? He said, oh, he was great. And I looked at him and thought, but he never snitched on me. So after about 9 months of being a stubborn little prick, I was bored. And I looked at the old boy, and he gave me a wink, and he said, do you want to try a bit today, son? I said, yes, sir. And we started, and that was my boxing career. That's how it began.
Awesome. That's brilliant. Did you end up going into the amateurs first, I assume?
Amateurs, my biggest probably success was in the mid-'80s. There was a championship called the NABCs, and my trainer said there's a guy in this championship who's going for Guinness Book. He was 73-0. He'd won 11 national titles, and he was going for this 12th or 10, and he'd going for his 11th. It was one of the two. And he was set to sign with Frank Warren for a lot of money at the time. So there was a big interest in him, and in fact they televised this particular championship, which they never normally did, but they did it just because of his story. And a guy called George Collins, and I met him in the final. it's funny, my trainer said, let's go. I think we can beat him. So I said, no problem. So we trained. I had about 10 fights to get to the final. I fought him at the Grosvenor House in the final of the NABCs and knocked him out in the first round. And then I turned on a blaze of glory. There was only really two promoters at the time, Warren and Mickey Duff, Mike Barrett. So Warren honored his contract, and he turned pro with Warren Collins, and I turned pro with Barrett and Duff. And then we had pretty parallel careers going up. And then I won the British Championship, and then the WBC International Championship, and then I challenged Eubank. He went up similar. Yeah, I think he lost to Kirkland Lang, and I think Gary Jacobs beat him. But he was about 23 or 22-0 before his first defeat. We always tried to get it on again, but it never happened as professionals. But I don't think they fancied it again, so we never got there. But would have been interesting to meet again down the line, but we never did.
You stepped up to fight Eubank, didn't you? A couple of weeks, am I right?
Yeah. I was in the top 10 in the world at junior middleweight, but I was having real problems getting world title fights. It's the politic bullshit, at Hunnigan at the time, and there was a couple of other for Chris Pyatt, and they were all involved with the same management. So they was just keeping us separate, all the time. So it was like you're constantly waiting for title fights. And I pretty much got into a management dispute and decided to sit it out rather than fight. I think I had 11 months on my contract. So I said, fuck it, I'm not going to fight. I'll wait till it runs out. So I had 11 months out. And literally, like the day the contract came back, the day the contract ended and I was a free agent, I got a phone call, do you want to fight Eubanks? But it was pretty short notice. And of course, it was heavier weight. And I didn't think I could pull it off. Like I hadn't trained. I always kept myself in a little bit of shape, but I was not in any kind of world title shape. And I only had less than a month. So I went to bed. And I woke up the next day, I said, fuck it, let's do it. So I jumped on a plane, went to Vegas. Freddie Roach trained me. Got in decent shape, but it's one thing being fit, and it's another thing being conditioned and strong, where you've had a lot of time. And I felt that my strength wasn't really there. And so, yeah, I lost that one.
Yeah, it's a month's nowhere near enough, is it, to get your kind of minimum? I'm going to say sort of 8 to 10 weeks, isn't it? If you're already in a decent position, But
you need a month to get ready to start the 8 weeks. Ideally, you need a good month. Like Freddie said, I'd love to have you for a month on the road, get your wind good, and get you strong, and then we get into the into the prep where you can start to focus on the fight rather than focus on trying to get fit. So yeah, it was a rush. I have no excuse. Eubanks was a great fighter, as we all know, and I had the better of him the early rounds till he caught up with me. But I have to be honest, a lot of Eubanks fights he won late anyway. You know what I mean? That was his thing. He was so strong, he would wear you down. So had I been in the best shape of my life, he probably could have worn me down. Who knows? He was very strong, big, felt the weight a lot early on. I could just tell he was not like my other opponents that I'd fought, that I used to crack him and over they went. I was cracking him a few times and he was still there, So it's a difference. I do believe weights matter greatly in sport, certainly in boxing, because a middleweight, 11 stone 6, 11 7, they walk around 13 stone, and they come down and then they put it back on, and the big, I was a junior middleweight, I turned pro welterweight. So, I was a very, very small middleweight, probably up against one of the biggest middleweights, who then went up to super middle and light heavy. And he was trying to fight Tyson at one point, at heavyweight, Eubanks. So much bigger men. But in the early rounds, the first 4 or 5 rounds, I was ahead in all the cards. I felt I had the measure of him if I was strong enough to keep doing it. But if is a big ask. Certainly when you don't have the time. But I'm proud that I fought him. I'm proud that I challenged for it. I don't regret it. It's part of life. It's funny. My father, amazing man, but he wasn't a touchy-feely man. So as a child, I think kids need contact. You know what I mean? Your mum.
Yeah.
He was never give people a hug, or he was a man's man, a working man. Never told me he loved me in his life, but he showed it. He was an incredible father. But on the night of the fight, it's funny. My dad used to have a wispy chest. He had like fluid on his chest, and sometimes he'd fall asleep watching TV, and I would sneak up when he was, and I'd sit with him. He'd wake up, move me. You know what I mean? He was very like man's man. But I used to sometimes fall asleep with the sound of the like the ocean, and it just that my dad was with me, and I guess I was somewhat of a loner as a kid. But anyway, after the fight, I came out the ring. I was so angry for many reasons, mostly because I didn't give myself the best. I thought if he beat me and I was 100%, I could live with it. But I still bothers me. Not to say I would have beat him, but to say that I would have fought him at my best. That's all I wanted, and we tried to get the rematch many times and never happened. But the funny thing is, I came out the ring. I was so angry, and I got in the changing room. I said, "Everyone's got to fuck off, leave me alone." And my 2 brothers left. Everyone left, and my dad. I said, "Dad, can I just have a minute?" And anyway, the place emptied, and I'm sat in the changing room on my own with a towel on my head, and I must have been there for some time. The lights are fucking going off. I could hear people sweeping up in the corridors, and in the darkness, I hear this. I'm sat against the door. I closed the door and sat so no one could get in. And in the darkness, I heard this, and I said, "Dad," and he went, "Yes, son." And he was fucking sat outside the door, the other side, on his own, in the cold, waiting for me. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm waiting for you, son." So I opened the door, and he sat next to me on this bench, and it was 2 men who've never said 3 words to each other in their lives. And he was not much for talking, my dad, and he said, "Son, when you was born in the house." I said, "Okay," and he said, "I was out I was buying a carry cot for your mother," and he said, "I came back," and he said, "There was an ambulance and a nurse," and I said, "What's going on?" He said, "You was 2 weeks early, I think." He said, the nurse said, he's upstairs. So he said, I ran up the steps. He said, I'll never forget, he said, I had these oily hands, he had these hands, we used to call them the claw, these big fucking hands. He said, I put the carry cup down, I was trying to wipe my hands, and he said, they'd put you in a chest of drawers, like in a little blanket. And he said, I moved these white sheets with these fucking oily, cracked hands, and I picked up this little thing. And he said, kid, I always knew you was going to be somebody. And I just looked at him, and a tear rolled down his fucking eyes, and one fell down mine. He said, "Let's go home." I said, "Okay." And that was a moment was worth losing the fight for. That was his way of saying you was always special to me. And I'll never forget, we went out, and there was a limousine waiting for me. It'd been waiting like 2 hours. Everyone had left. And I looked at the fucking limousine. I saw a black cab, and I whistled the cab. And me and my dad got in the cab and left the fucking limo. I don't know why I did that. It was just a moment in my life. I said, "Fuck all that glorious shit." And I went back to the hotel. Everyone went home the next day. I got on a flight, went to LA, and just kind of reflected on a lot of things. I quit boxing for political reasons, really, not for the fighting. I didn't love the fighting. It was something I did, but I don't think anyone can love to fight unless you're fucking crazy. I mean, I think you like it more than me, Binchy, but it was, I love winning. I love many things in boxing. I miss taste of food when you're hungry. So there was a lot of things in the game I loved. I loved to challenge myself. I was always afraid, and I would always get through it and triumph. Like 99% of my fights I won, so that was lucky. And but there were many things I loved in it, and there were many things I didn't love in it. And the politics was what really made me retire. So I was out. I said, "Fuck it, I'm out the business." I was pissed off. We couldn't get a rematch, and then I thought, I can't leave the game getting beat. I've been in it too long. So I called this guy in England to get me a fight. He said, "Who you want to fight?" I said, "Anyone, my weight. Anyone my weight. I don't give a fuck. Anyone." So I trained like hard, got back down to my weight. And the funny thing is, I went home and got me a little fight at Brixton Academy. And I go home, and the day before they switched the opponent to a middleweight, and like trying to fuck me again. It was so like, you can't even have a fight, my last fight in my mind. They didn't know, but they try to switch it to someone young, up and coming guy who was I was a good scalp for him. Anyway, I beat him, and then said, "Fuck you all," and got on a flight and never came back. And then I went to LA, and the next chapter of my life began. Which was very.
What age did you retire from boxing then?
Late 20s.
So it's quite early, really, isn't it? If you're
7ish, very young, yeah. Like I can't remember the exact age, but young. Nowhere near reached my prime. I was still learning. I remember in the gym, I was learning every day. I was training with Freddie. I was sparring with Mike McCallum and some of these great American fighters, and it was a whole new journey in America. The sparring is like fights, they try and kill you. I was trying to survive every day. All these fuckers trying to kill me. A little white boy in a gym full of guys who were great fighters who never got opportunities, not commercial maybe, but from all over the world. And they were angry, and there was me fight for world titles, and all these, they thinking of making all this money, which I wasn't really, but I was making more than them. So they want to kill you. So every day I used to hate going to the gym. I had to fight for my life every day, but I learned so much. And I thought if I'd have stayed there, if I'd have stayed boxing and stayed in that environment, I think I would have become a much better fighter. But it wasn't to happen. I went to LA. I used to travel London, LA, Vegas when I was training. I never ever stayed in LA. And so I had a friend who was an actor. He used to always say, come and visit. So this particular time when I left, I went to LA for a couple of weeks to see him, and he picked me up at the airport, and he was going on an audition. And he said, "Do you mind?" I said, no problem. So we drove to Hollywood Boulevard. He went on his audition. I was sat in the car waiting for him. And there was a parking space in front of me, and an old lady tried to pull in the space, and two guys tried to get the same space, and they get into a confrontation. She was like 70s. And I'm watching thinking, what the fuck? Never forget, it was raining, packed Hollywood Boulevard full of, foreigners and tourists. And they get into this dispute, and she ain't moving and they ain't moving. And it was her space, she was backing into it. And the guy gets out the car, and he punches the window of the car, and she goes like this. And she's a little old woman. I'm thinking, what the fuck? I was about to get out the car, and then I'm thinking, been in LA 5 minutes. I'll be in jail. You know what I mean? So I didn't get out. She was fine. But then he got more animated, and then he walked to the front of a car, and he snapped the windshield wiper off a car. And I thought, this is a fucking joke. So I jumped out the car. I said, yo, what are you doing? And he turned to pull the blade on me. And I'm thinking, fuck. And anyway, I was happy that there was hundreds of people watching. I thought, at least if I knock him out, I've got witnesses, you know what I mean? So I said to him, what are you doing? He said, I'll kill you, motherfucker. And he pulled the blade out, little knife. And I said, what are you going to do with that? I'll fucking kill you. I started laughing. I said, you'll make a little hole, and then I said, I'll rip your fucking eyes out your skull, you prick. And he shit himself. So I took the knife off him. He apologized to the woman. and they fucked it off. And I got her out the car, parked the car for her, and we had a conversation for 10 minutes. And I'm a cook. I love cooking. I always since I'm a kid. I suppose because I had no mother, so I cooked myself. But my dad couldn't fucking cook. But somehow we end up talking about food, and she was a really interesting woman from New York. And I love old people. You know, I've always loved old people, animals and old people. Kids, I love. You know, they fascinate me because they're so. They don't think so. They're very instinctual kids. I think. But anyway, I had this great conversation with her, and she said, "Well, how long are you going to be in LA?" And I said, "A couple of weeks." And she said, "Why don't you come and have lunch? I owe you lunch." So I said, "You got a date?" So I just liked her. So she gave me a number. I got back in the car, and we sat in the. My mate comes from the audition. Has no fucking clue what I've just been through. I don't even tell him. And we get back in the car, and he starts to drive off. He almost has a fucking accident, and he sees the number. He says, "Where'd you get the number?" I said, "Why?" He said, "Do you know who that is?" She'd written a name. I said, "Just met her." Why? He said, "She's the most famous acting teacher in LA." So he wanted to study with her. I had no interest in acting at all. I was quite shy, to be honest. I had this persona that I was flashy and all this, but it was all bullshit. I had a flashy style of fighting, maybe, but I was a pretty shy guy. And I didn't like interviews. I did a few modeling things, and I have to correct the record. I was never a model. I used to get campaigns because I was a boxer. To get more value out of a fighter, like someone who's famous, than a regular model. So if there's a, Calvin Klein, they either get a model or they get a champion boxer. So I'd get work because I had a little more value. So and I didn't really like it, but I would do it because it was easy money. So
that because there's been quite. I've read quite a lot that you actually did model for Calvin Klein and Versace. Is that you say? Then you just kind of
yeah, it was like I'd get offers to, do you want to do a Calvin Klein campaign?
Right. Okay.
Sure, easy money, you know. Why not? I'd show up for 2 days, get a lot of money, and probably bang the other model and go home. And so it was fun, and so I did that, but I was not something I liked, and so pretty shy. I had no interest in acting or even any kind of knowledge of what it took or what it was about, or it was just something that never crossed my mind. And so anyway, he wanted an interview with this woman, so I called her and set up a meeting, and he went. I went with him, and he the worst fucking interview I've ever had. He kept telling her how good he was and all this shit. He didn't listen to her, and I kept thinking, shut up, just shut up. He kept saying, I've studied with Stanislavski and Meisner and the method, and I'm thinking, if you're that fucking good, why do you need a teacher? You know what I mean? It was stupid, and I just thought there's a saying, as you probably know, it's better to remain seated and be thought of a fool than to stand and be outspoken and thus remove all possible doubt. And so if you just fucking don't speak, you might be smart, but if you open your mouth, they know you're not. You know what I mean? So I kept thinking, anyway, at the end of the interview, she asked him a very interesting question, which kind of pricked my ears up. She said, I'm going to ask you one more question. And there's no correct answer. I'd just like to know your answer. And based on the answer, I often decide whether I'm going to take a student or not. And he said, no problem. And she said, in one sentence, give me the difference between love and lust. So I was thinking, wow, interesting. He went on for 20 fucking minutes, all this shit bullshit. I wanted to puke. And I thought, you don't listen. She said one sentence. I remember the question clearly. So she cut him off. She said, okay, but that's it. I'll call you, I'll let you know. And then she said, before we leave, Gary, I was sat at the back. Could you give me your answer? I said, no. She said, why not? I said, I don't want to be an actor. She said, no, but I'd love your answer. And I said, I'm not interested in answering any questions. So we get into it. Why not? I said, I don't want to fucking answer. So my mate says, answer. I said, shut the fuck up. So it's like a soap opera. So I said, so we get into this whole discussion. So I said, okay. She said, I said, I'll answer your question, and then we leave. She said, no problem. So I said, in one sentence is what you said, and she smiled because she knew I listened, and it wasn't even my interview. I said, in one sentence, the difference between love and lust. I said, with love you give, and with lust you take. And she looked at me. We said goodbye, and then she called me that night, and she said, you know, let's have lunch. And I said, no problem. And she said, you know, Gary, you're very interesting. And she said, you know, you can't learn to be interesting. You either are, you ain't. I said, thank you. And we smiled, and I went and had lunch. But when I got there, same studio, there was a little red flashing light outside the door. So I'm not a fucking dummy. I thought obviously not to walk in. So I waited outside, and there's another door at the back, and someone opened the door at the back and said, shh, come in. And I went in, and Sidney Portier was doing a poetry class, and I sat at the back of the class, and I was mesmerized. It was something I've never seen before. The use of language, like the long road. She said, use that language long, let them see how long that road is. And it was like, wow. And then I'll never forget, there was a line in the poem where he says it's over. And he says, it's over. And she said, are you still in love with this woman, Sydney, in the poem? And he says, yeah. She said, why do you resolve it? Leave it unresolved. Instead of it's over, it's over. And the subtlety of, she said, now, and these subtleties, when someone does that, subconsciously, the audience realize he still loves the woman. And, you know, and it's these subtleties and details that I was always a detail fighter. I used to be very specific in the way I approach punching, the way I approach making people miss by millimeters. And them details is something I enjoyed in the fight game. And I've always been a detail-oriented person. It's funny because the teacher said to me, you don't miss anything. And she said, it's a beautiful quality. It's quite a sad quality. I said, why is it a sad quality? She said, she didn't know anything about my life. She said, are your parents together? I said, no, my mother left. And she said, yeah, I thought so. I said, oh, okay. And she said, your attention's outward. You don't miss anything. And I sit in a room, I read people, I watch people. She said, that's because as a child, you had a lot of pain. So you put your attention that way, not this way. And she said, but it's a beautiful quality to be in this profession because great actors are great watchers, great listeners. And to really listen is the real key to acting and to, you know, to observe and to pick up details. She said it's a beautiful quality. And most actors, which is, I guess, true when I've looked into a lot of the careers. In fact, most great fighters come from some kind of, most come from broken homes. Most come from some kind of pain, some kind of insecurity. I was a very insecure kid because, you know, you get left as a child, you don't realize it's nothing to do with me, but you think if I was any good, why would you leave? So you blame yourself and you think I thought I still do it. I think I'm shit at everything I do. People see me in movies, they go, oh, you did a great job. I'm like, yeah, right. You know, I never give myself credit for anything. As a fighter, I always thought I was rubbish. But
I think it's called imposter syndrome.
No matter what you do,
it's more common than you think, you know, and a lot of people think that, and they kind of, even though they're succeeding and doing really, really well, they kind of think that they're not good enough for that profession.
It's funny because for years I'd knock people out, I'd stand over at men, and it's like I had a little hole in my heart when my mother left. And no matter how many people I stood above, it never filled that little hole, and I never felt worthy of anything, and never felt like I'd ever achieved anything. As I got older, it's funny, I had a few fights before Eubanks, fought a guy called Seamus Casey. He was one of these fighters who fought everybody. Not a contender, but a very valuable person. in the game. There's no winners without losers, you know, and he fights anyone anywhere, and I really destroyed him. It's the best I ever performed, even though he was an average fighter. I did a job with him. I've never seen it. I know someone has the film somewhere, so but if anyone has it, send it to Pinchy and he'll give it to me. But I destroyed him, but I hit him with a shot, and I heard a primal scream in the audience. Weird. I think it was your call, which is like a surround sound that the crowd's kind of above you. I heard scream, and it guttural, and it wasn't a normal scream, and it was like it was either his mother, his sister, his wife. It was someone that was connected to him, because I really destroyed him, and it haunted me for some time. I used to think about it sometimes, and I thought my quest to prove worthiness hurts people. You know, it's a strange phenomenon. It's a strange thought I had in my head. And as I've got older, my views have changed to the degree that I think instead of standing above a man, it's how many people I can pick up. Maybe I can heal myself that way. And it's different, you know, I have a different view on, I don't want to be the center of attention in a room anymore. I don't want to be the guy. I want to sit in the background and help people. I was in Bulgaria. I'm in Bulgaria, but on this movie, a girl called Jessica Tenikajieva, she's a friend for 20 years. She called me. I was in Thailand, said, I want you to do this movie. Amazing girl, talented actress, and she said, I kind of wrote it for you. So in doing the movie, I ended up getting involved more with Desi in making the movie. I ended up producing. I was the exec producer on the movie, but in doing so, the lead role was for a young girl, and I said to Desi, "Let's get someone unknown, give someone a chance. You know, we got enough good actors around. Let's get a." So we found this girl. She hadn't done a lot. She was amazing. Eleonora, I can't remember her last name. She'd get mad at me. But Desi said, will you work with her? You know, so she was rehearsing with me. She'd come to the house, we'd rehearse before the film, and then on the set, I would get there and I would run it with her and we'd talk about it. And at the wrap party, when we finished the movie, she came to me. She did an amazing job, and she gave me a hug. She was crying. She said, Gary, I can't thank you for what you did. And I said, come on. I said, I got more out of it than you did. I really enjoyed seeing this young girl blossom. And she said, please don't leave Bulgaria. I told all my friends, and will you make a school here? And I ended up setting up a school, and I just did my first masterclass. I had 25 actors, and it was the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. Just helping these young kids flourish, and then I just came back now. I'm about to do another one, which is when we were talking last night. I said I got to leave. I'm going doing a class in.
Yeah.
I'm in a little lake country place at the minute, friend's house. But it's about half an hour from Sofia, so I go back to Sofia this afternoon to pick up with a new class that starts today. So that's something I'm doing, which I'm really enjoying. Yeah.
Well, awesome. So I think, like, as you get older and the experience you gain from life, you kind of do, it becomes less about your kind of self and making a name for yourself and being successful. And then that shift changes. And I guess you kind of want less fuss as well. I think that happens, doesn't it? You know, as you get older, you do take a step back a little bit, and you feel like, you know, I can't be bothered with the hustle and bustle and fuss.
I often think when I die, and if anyone comes to the funeral, and the people are around the coffin, what are you going to be remembered for? It's not for. It's like if there's a God, if there's a heaven, you won't be remembered for what you accumulated. You'll be remembered for what you gave away. You know, and so it's like, what did you do? Sure, you did this, you did an actor, you fighter, but that's all about me. What did you do for someone else? And so I just feel that It's like Mr. Freeman, my trainer, this old man who changed my life as a young man. Like, he's indelible in my mind, this man, what he did for me. He didn't have to do the things he did, but he believed in a kid, little skinny kid from St. Helens who had a chip on his shoulder. But he saw something and he nurtured it, and he gave me a backbone, and he took a fragile little broken boy and made him into something. It's not even something. He made me into a stronger man. You know, he gave me a belief in myself. And without him, where the fuck would I have been today? I don't know. And so that, like, hopefully he's in heaven for doing it. And I'm sure he did it for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, that like you say, that's him giving back, and he's giving back, and he probably, I'm sure it did mean something to him, but he probably didn't think twice about it. But the impact that's had, I can see you getting like a little bit emotional about it. Is that impact he's had on your life, is like he'll never know that impact, and it's just from doing something nice, and putting something back. So I can see why you kind of you want to. It's apparent to me that you're a really nice guy. Anyway, I knew that as soon as I started speaking to you. But no, that's really like I like that you're putting something back. It's brilliant.
It's funny, your flaws. Like, people don't. I'm doing a documentary now. It's called Faith. I don't know if it'll remain there. And faith to me is not about religion. It's about believing in something when there's no data. Nothing to prove it, but you still believe. You've been in places in your life, and I'd love to talk about your life at some point, because people like you are far more valuable than people like me and the earth. What you've done for others, and put yourself out there and at risk, and selfless and real risk, not like getting fucking knocked out. You get a bullet in your head and blown up, or the shit you've done is unimaginable to me. But this documentary is about how our flaws are the great strengths. It's like I was an insecure kid because I got left. So insecurity is a very powerful tool to catch up in the morning. It's like, and it's funny because I did 9 months and never hit the bag. I was angry because they made me go to this gym, and the trainer told me years later, he said, I've never seen an 8-year-old kid so stubborn. 9 months of not doing it. It's like not nine. He said, and they kept saying, this is a stubborn prick. He said, if I can make that stubbornness into a positive, you're going to be a hard kid to beat. Because he said, you're so stubborn. And I was obsessed. I was never afraid to get hurt. I just didn't want to lose. And I didn't want to lose for many reasons. A lot of them were not for me. It was like, I can't let Mr. Freeman down. He's put all this time in me in. But I had this drive coming from insecurity, and it's very powerful. Fear is very powerful. It's like, if a deer can jump 20 feet, but a lion's chasing it can jump 30 feet, you say that fear, that 10 feet is its friend. It makes you perform. So if you can not allow the fear to freeze you, and you can use it in a positive. So I was always afraid. I'm not ashamed to be afraid. I'm just not a coward. So I just learned to deal with it, and make it work for me. And so, all these people, you don't have to be afraid. That's fucking, but no, be afraid. It's okay. Just don't let it cripple you. Just use it. And
the fear is good, though. I'm a strong believer is if you never put yourself out your comfort zone in your life, you never really test yourself.
Never.
And that's the case. And whether it's from going to war, whether it's going in a boxing ring, it's each individual case by case. You're putting yourself out of that comfort zone. It's a horrible feeling going into the ring, as it is doing other bits of us. But you do that and you test yourself, and then you find out what you're kind of worth, almost, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, I know you're interviewing me, but let me ask you, why did you take the course of life you took? Were your parents together?
My parents were together. I think what it was with me is I've only just recently, within the last 4 or 5 years, found out that I've got ADHD. Now, I'm not a big fan of labels. I've said this many, many times, but it's helped me understand my brain. Now, my brain with ADHD, one of the symptoms is you like the adrenaline rush. And you can't sit still for 5 minutes, hence the podcast stuff now. I'm a firefighter, have been for 10 years, but I'm always chasing that next thing and trying to better myself and stuff like that, which is not uncommon. But for me, the course of life was I was bored with the ordinary, and I wanted different, and I wanted experiences, and I wanted adrenaline, and that's probably the main reason. I was a naughty kid. It's made me laugh when you was talking about it. I was in trouble a lot, but I couldn't understand why I was so frustrated and angry. And that's because my brain is wired a little bit different to perhaps normal people. So,
did you ever get in a situation on your very interesting, crazy life where you thought, fuck me, I picked the wrong job here?
oh God, yeah. This time sort of working in Iraq as a bodyguard, when I've been in situations. We got ambushed one particular time in 2009, and I was sat there thinking, Jesus, be careful what you wish for. You want that action, but when there's rounds wanging down and hitting the vehicle you're in, you're thinking, shit, But then you come out of it at the other side, and
it's amazing, right?
oh, the buzz after, I was like, oh yeah, but at the time, like anyone else, I'm shitting myself. But like you've just said, you're not a coward. You've got a flight or fight syndrome, haven't you? And some people tend to curl up in a ball, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's kind of a primal instinct. And for me, I've always been the kind of face it head on. Sounds like it's similar to characters to yourself. Face it head on rather than kind of just, it's go forward, so to speak. So yeah.
It's funny. My mate, I have a guy called Monty Cox. He's the number one big cat guy in the world. Like, so all of his cats were Siegfried and Roy's cats. They're all Monty. Monty, he's a trainer, and he's not a man who likes cats in captivity. He's just he's not one of them guys. He's a guy. He was involved with a place called the Wildlife Way Station, where they, there are cats that have been captive, so, and they need looking after. So a lot of abused cats from zoos and from circuses, and so they have this sanctuary for cats. And Monty is the guy, and amazing guy with big cats. And so he is a great friend. He's in LA. And so he had a cat called Montana. He's got maybe 200 big cats, and only about out the 200 in the compound, lions, tigers, cougars, mountain lions, leopards. Out the 200, maybe 5 come out the cages. The rest will fucking eat you, you know what I mean? But he has a cat, Montana. Montana died a few years ago. He was in his 20s when he died. 700-pound white tiger, and he has Montana. And I spent a lot of time with Monty and Montana. It's on a 50-acre lot. We go up and we'll take Montana out, and you can walk for miles, and you don't see anybody. There's water, there's lakes. It's all inside 50 acres. If you get to the end of the compound, it's they can't get out, but you'd think they're in the wild. But they all have the cages, but we take a few out. So I spent many days with me, Monty, and the tiger walking through the mountains. And there's times when tigers are, no matter how nice the cat is, instinct beats the brain. So if I'm with Montana, the tiger, and I go through some long grass, and he sees me through the grass, all of a sudden his brain switches. Now he wants to eat me because it's instinct, So you have to do certain things. Weather changes a cat's brain. There's things that so Monty's always shutting him down. He'll see him start to turn, and he'll nudge him and take him out of it. And so it's a constant battle. And I said to Monty, what if he goes, because they go sometimes, they just, they're very temperamental. He said, if he goes, Gary, just fuck off. He said he'll come after me first because I'm the boss. He said he'll come, and then you're second. But he said, trust me, you won't save me. So if he comes after me, get the fuck out. I mean, amazing guy. We have these rules, but there's been a few times when I've been up there and it's got a bit close to where the cat's gone a bit doolally, and I've thought to myself, I've just left my girl in LA. I'm supposed to have dinner with her. And I'm thinking, I'm not going home. I'm fucking, this is crazy. And you really shit yourself. Like you're going to die. There's me, a 700-pound cat, and Monty, and the cat's giving Monty problems. Monty's got a stick this big. That's all he has. And I'm thinking, we've got to fucking die here. But then you get through it, and we put the cat back in the fucking cage, and I'm like, woof, that was like hell for the last hour to get it back in the cage. And you think, what the fuck is wrong with you? And you read about people, but then I can't do it again and again and again. And I've done it 100 times, and I love it.
Challenge, and it gives you that buzz and that adrenaline that you perhaps need, and I believe we all need in some shape or form. However you get that is your personal preference, but I think that's what makes things. Otherwise, you just stagnate, don't you? You know.
Yeah, it's like life can be monotonous, can't it? You know, the best thing about boxing for me is the morning after, when you've come through it and you go, wow, like, you know, all the work you put in and all this, you know, and then you get some. And to win something, you know, it's not every day you win in life. Just anything, you know, just to go through something and become out on top, victorious, put yourself out there, and like you say, try and further yourself mentally, physically, and yeah, that's the boxing is just the second part of it.
It's a bit like Marmite in the boxing. People, you know, you either love it or you hate it. I love sparring. I still spar whenever I can. I like that feeling, strange feeling when your nose aches after sparring. You've got a bit of a swelling on your eye. I don't know. It's weird, and you know, you tell people that, and people think you're a bit sort of bonkers. But I don't know. It's just, I think as soon as you spar and you box for the first time. I mean, I'm not comparing my boxing. I've boxed unlicensed, and I came from sort of white collar, and it's nothing like your career at all. But the principles are the same. But yeah, it's weird getting punched in the face. You have like, and when you realise that your jaw's not made of glass, or you're not made of glass, you suddenly think, hold on, this is, you know, it's quite. And I think if everyone tried, you'd be surprised how many people would actually like it. Because again, it's a bit of a primal instinct, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's anything. It's like if you go for a run in the morning, like there's so many days you say, fuck that, you know, lie in bed. But you actually get up, you do it, you come back, you have a shower, you put your clothes on, you feel like $1 million. You've done something for yourself, you know? It's like, it's just the little, I tell people, just, they look at you like you're Superman. I said, no, it starts with go for a walk, then go for a trot. And, you know, it's like laying a brick every day. You know, if you keep doing it, and, you know, in 2 months, you've got a wall, you know, and in 6 months, you got a house. And it's like, you've got to start somewhere, and just start, and just every day. And what happens is every day when you don't want to do it and you do it, your self-esteem goes up a little bit when you get in that shower and you did it, and you start to feel better about yourself. And it's life training for me. I know Tyson Fury has these mental health problems. I think a lot of people have them and don't even admit it or don't even realize it. But when you do something for yourself, you know, you have Gary time, you have Vinci time, where you actually do something yourself for yourself. And people often go through life and they don't do that. And whether you like it or not, whether you enjoy running or you don't, you spend a bit of valuable time alone and do something that's positive for yourself and continue to do it. Eventually, self-esteem goes up and respect for yourself goes up when you do things that you didn't particularly want to do, but you did it because you made a commitment. Then life gets better. You know, life gets better. It's day by day. It's it's every day. Do so. If you go to bed at night and write 3 things, people pray, and I'm not religious. I would love to think there's something, and I've had friends who have had experiences in life. There may well be something, there may not. But prayer for me is like, go say, I'm going to, before you go to bed at night, before you hit the pillow, give yourself 3 things to do tomorrow and do them. Prayer for me is that you do them, you know, and get up and do them. And the next day, give yourself 3 things. And if you did that for 6 months, you'd be amazing what you've accomplished in 6 months. And you say, God's good. Well, is it you're good? You know, you're the person who did it. But the prayer for me is the conversation with yourself that you that you commit to, and don't let yourself down.
Yeah,
You know,
that's a good look at it, definitely. Because, like I say, I think, if you don't kind of plan, there's an element of planning in there as well. And if you don't set yourself up for the day or the following day, it's like the day goes by so quick, and then you find out you've not done anything. So I think a famous kind of American general or colonel said, quite famously said that, yeah, every day when you get up, make your bed, because that's the
yeah.
first thing you've achieved. First thing in the morning, you've achieved something. It's just making your bed, but psychologically, you then,
Well, you have the worst day in the world. At least you go home, your bed's made. You know.
yeah, something simple as that. So,
It is. It's like, get your house in order. You know, depression. We've all been through it. But imagine you're clean. You're in a little shitty apartment with all your bullshit wrapped around you. Clean the house, and you feel better. You know, it's like little things add up. It's the little things. Um, Genius is like being good at lots of little things. And just do something every day for yourself. People don't do it. Can you imagine? You said I didn't get a chance to go for a run today. You got 24 fucking hours in a day. And 10 minutes, but you'll
that's
find any excuse not to do it.
exactly. And a lot of people turn around and say, "Oh, I haven't got time to train." And like, I've done lots of jobs over the years, not all of them. It's like sort of being shot at or fire service. I've kind of worked for my cousin on the roads for periods of time for a few months before I went back to Iraq and stuff. And it's difficult, but I'd get up at 5. I've trained from the age of 15. I know you're big into your training, and have done from a very young age. So I've trained from 15. So um, even if I had to get up at 4:30 in the morning, I'd get up at 4:30 in the morning and I'd hit the gym. A lot of gyms 24 hours now. I mean, it's not nice. That alarm goes off at 4:30 and you think, but you do it and then you're done. You set up for the day. And for me, that without training, when I'm injured, which I've been injured a hell of a lot over the years because I just don't stretch, probably like most people. It kind of, I do end up going down a bit of a kind of depression route when I'm not in a gym or I'm not boxing or I'm not training, because, and I think if people understand the powers of getting yourself into the gym, I think, it'd help mental health a lot more. I know the big advocate for mental health now, and quite rightly so.
I know a lot of these celebrities. It's a small town, LA, and everyone runs into each other, and the Stallones and all of these guys, and everyone, hundreds of millions of dollars he's worth, and he trains every fucking day at 5 in the morning. And he says to me, Sly said to me, Gary, if I'm gonna go out, he said the secret is if I'm gonna go out and go on the piss, no big deal, but I will be at the gym at 5 in the morning, no matter what. And he said if he goes out till 3 a.m., he'll be in the gym at 5. And he said, and when you suffer because of it, that's what decides, are you going to do it again next week or not? He said, and if you have that commitment, you got to be in the gym. So you have to take your hat off to these guys. It's like The Rock is the same. Mark Wahlberg, they start training at 4 o'clock. The guys are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but they do it. And there's something in it to have that kind of discipline and that focus. And I don't know if I'd do it if I had hundreds of millions in the bank. I would hope so. I would imagine when you get to that stage, it becomes more important because that's all you've really got to know who the fuck you are, and money can be fantastic, but it can also be a real leveler in the fact that now you've got everything. Who the fuck are, now what are you going to do?
And you can spend a lot of time. You can see why a lot of people that have got a lot of money go down the drugs and alcohol route as well, because it's like you can afford to do anything you want. So it's like, why would I not? Today I'm going to get up and I'm going to fly to somewhere hot, sunny on a beach and get pissed. That's what people would do. So again, it's about that routine and being regimented in the fact that you get yourself in a gym, you set out your stall for the day. And that's regardless whether you're on your arse or you're worth hundreds of millions, I think. So you got to have that structure because it can go both ways, can't it?
Yeah, I think too much of anything is is too much of anything. You know what I mean? You've got to have some kind of balance. But the thing is, life is youth is wasted on the young. You know, you got to go through the shit to understand it. And by the time you learn the lessons, you kind of. I interviewed Carlos Palomino, a great fighter, 8 times world champion, and he said, you know, this planet's a school of learning. You know, and very beautiful interview, but very insightful. And yeah, we part and parcel of it. We're going to make mistakes, and we hopefully learn from them and pass it forward. You know what I mean? They say a wise man doesn't learn from his mistakes. A wise man learns from the mistakes of others.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm conscious, obviously, of your time, because I know that you've got to go and travel to the school today where you're teaching at and stuff. So I want to briefly touch on. There's a couple of things I want to touch on before you disappear, if you don't mind. Obviously, we talked about your acting. I've got to talk about Deadman's shoes. Now, I said to you the other night, Deadman's shoes for me, and again, I said to you again the other night, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. Deadman's shoes is my favorite film of all time. So when you agreed to come on the podcast, I was like, literally like a school kid, honestly, in a sweet shop. Because Deadman's Shoes to me, it's a cool classic within the parachute regiment. I explained that to you again the other night. So yeah, it's how did you end up in that film? Because again, I think you came off Alexander, a big budget kind of film, to then a kind of low budget film in the Midlands in Matlock.
It was a crazy journey because in acting you work to get what's his rate, what you get paid, and the more you get paid, you're as good as your last movie. And so it's like Brad Pitt gets 20 million a movie because, let's say, in the height of his career, a Brad Pitt movie does 200 million at the box office, right? So he's worth 10% of his box office. So he gets 20 a movie now. So if his next movie does 300 million, they'll get 30 for his next. What's your value? So I was not at that level because I was not the lead in Alexander. But the more you earn, the more you rate. And so I come off Alexander, which was a long shoot, big budget, made decent money. And then this little Deadman's Shoes movie comes up, which my agent said it's a great director and all of this, but it's no money, and there's no money. It's really no money, and we can't come off Alexander and do this movie. So I read it and I liked it, and I wanted to do it, and I ended up doing it and falling out with the agent over it, and went and did it in Matlock, Derby. And yeah, it was no money, but it was invaluable film for my career. It did more for me than Alexander. You know what I mean? It's like you say, it became a cult movie, and I'm so happy and proud that I did it. Bunch of great guys: Shane Meadows, Paddy, Toby Kebbell, all the boys. And it's funny, when I went, a few of them were not actors. One was a window cleaner, and one was something else. It's like Shane hired these real guys. It was a fucking process, the casting, and at first, it was written for like a 9-foot skinhead, my role, like a huge monster. And when Shane met me, my agent said, Gary, and he said, I'll meet him. And we met. I went from London to Nottingham. We had a great meeting, and he gave me the job. It was on a Friday, and on the Monday they cancelled me. And so my agent said, you can't do that. He's just give you the job, then cancel you. And Shane says, I don't know. I want him, but I don't want him. And so will he come again and meet us again? So the agent said, no way he's coming back. I said, no, I'll go back. So I went back again, fighting with the agent, but I said, I want to go back. So I got back on a train, went back, and he had all the actors in the room, and he didn't tell me much. And I went in, and there was a couple of them were rude to me. He had it all set up, and I fucking put it on 2 of these actors like they shit themselves for real. But they'd been told what to do, and kind of one of them said to me, "Do you want a cup of tea?" I said, "Sure." I didn't know who they were, I thought there was just people in this office. He said, "Do you want a cup of tea?" I went, "Yeah." He said, "Kettle's over there, mate. I'll have 2 sugars." And they all start laughing. I look at him, and they just blanked me, and they were very rude. At one point, someone said something a little bit offish. I fucking launched him off the couch, like shit himself. I said, "I'll cut your fucking eyes out, you clown." And he white as a ghost. And I fucking, And Shane went, cut, 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 cut. And he was hiding Shane. He had hidden cameras, and these were the actors. And he said, I just wanted to see how you handle these motherfuckers. And he said, you got the job. So that's how it came about. It was a strange process. We all started laughing. And I went back, I got ready for the movie, and we shot it 3 weeks in Matlock Derby, yeah. But it was an interesting journey.
How long it took? 3 weeks to shoot?
That was it. Run and gun, 3 weeks.
Wow, that is incredible.
Alexander, $200 million movie. Shane's 800 grand or something like that.
Wow. But Alexander was Oliver Stone, and obviously Deadmans, Shane Meadows is obviously a well-respected actor around the Midlands and stuff. Yeah. So yeah, that's bonkers.
Yeah, two extremes, from 5-star hotels to a bunch of us in an apartment sleeping on fucking couches on the floor. It was just a mad 3 weeks of mayhem. But in a big budget movie, everyone's watching the clock, overtime, double time, 3 times. You can make a fortune to go over in a big movie. You were getting triple time, and this was you shoot all hours of the day. If you don't want to do it, don't sign up. And we just went and did it and left, and it was brilliant. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Did you expect it to kind of go like it did after with the? Because I mean, it's like I said, it is a cult classic. Most people I speak to have heard of the movie, and when they watch it, they are like, "Wow!" Because I mean, it starts off like you see, because it is you can tell it's a low budget movie when you're watching it to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But the storyline and the twist and everything else, and the revenge aspect to it is just absolutely brilliant, isn't it?
It was surreal. It was like a happening. It's like these events, and it was mostly scripted. I brought a lot of myself to it, and a lot of the boys brought their lives to the movie. But it was Shane knew what he was doing. We did what he gave us the freedom to do what we wanted, but it was pretty much based around this script. So very, very clever how we allowed actors to be comfortable to do what they want to do. And if you did something you didn't want to do, we'd let you know. But yeah, we had a lot of freedom. I didn't know what to expect, to be honest. It was like madness, the movie. And it was like, I knew there was something when we were shooting that was a little bit special. It was because I've done like 40, 50 projects now, and this was very different to everything I'd done. So I didn't know how it was going to turn out, but I knew it was something different. Yeah.
Awesome stuff. I mean, you won a kind of British Independent, a BIFA award for it, didn't you?
Nominated, didn't get it. It's funny, we had 13 nominations, and Paddy, Best Actor, I was Best Supporting, Toby, Best Newcomer, Shane, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Editor, Best Music, and we had 13 nominations. We all went to the BIFTAs, but none of us got it. It was funny. It's like there was another movie at the same time about an older lady. I think the movie was called Vera Drake, and they cleaned up. It was funny. There was people booing at the awards. It was quite because, I think Shane at least should have got, and Paddy, I think they should have got something. They wrote it together, directed it, and Paddy was fantastic in it. My favorite movie ever is A Room for Romeo Brass.
Yeah, well, some of that's filmed in Calverton, which is literally sort of 10 minutes away from where I live now. So yeah.
Genius is Paddy in that. I mean, absolutely brilliant in that. So yeah, I think Paddy's great. Shane's obviously so talented, and yeah, it was a great experience.
Awesome stuff. So yeah, again, lastly, I want to touch on. Firstly, you told me I could ask you anything.
Yeah.
Right? Say that. So I'm going to test you now. So you've been linked, or so I've read, to lots and lots of attractive women and famous women. Are they kind of the rumors true? Because I've heard Kylie Minogue, I've heard Liz Hurley, I've heard Kelly Brook. Can you talk about any of this, or are they true? Did you date some of these, or?
Yeah, of course. I would never talk about details, but yeah, yeah, most of the rumors or the people I've been linked with are true. there's a lot that's not been rumored.
Okay.
No, I mean, part and course of the journey. It's like, it's funny. I'm a very loyal. If I'm with someone, I've been in a bunch of long-term relationships. But when you're young and you're single and why not enjoy your life? You know what I mean? I mean, today the world's in such a mess with all this, all this. You can't even say anything anymore. It's like it's a scary place to be. But there was a time when you could be comfortable being men to men, and I'm a big believer in equal rights, and I think women are smarter than men most of the time, and I'd love to see more women in film directing because they have a sensibility that often men don't have. So, but I think we're different and we both have equal values, and it's okay that we're not all the same, and that's what makes life interesting. But today it's like you have to be very careful with being a man because you can't even. There, I live in LA, or there's no freedom of speech anymore. You can't say something because you say the wrong thing and the fucking you'd be in jail. I mean, it's insane what's going on. And people can do and say things, and you're guilty before you. If someone says something, it can be absolute bullshit, but already you're fucked. You got to fight for your dignity and for your because people can just say you there you are. It's crazy, but yeah, no, I lived in a time where it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed myself. Yeah.
No, good. Well, I kind of I'm glad I grew up, and my boy now, I say little boy, he's massive. He's like 14 this year, and I feel a bit for him because I grew up 80s, 90s, and like you've just said, times were very, very different then, and kind of had a good time and stuff. And I feel for him a bit now because times are very, very different. But no, with the equal opportunities thing, well, yeah, I'm big advocate for that as well. My fiance is actually a firefighter as well. So she's in the fire service. We're on the same shift, believe it or not. I've been for sort of 4 or 5 years, and it works. And she's an incredible firefighter, and she's very, very inspirational. So yeah,
Yeah.
I where coming from. So
Yeah, it's funny. I did an interview years ago, and I was married at the time to a girl called Rosalind Sanchez, a Puerto Rican actress. She was Miss World at one point, I think. But I was doing this interview with a very flamboyant interviewer, and I said to him, "Behave yourself," because I knew he wanted to ask me these kind of questions, and I said, "My wife's in the audience, so behave your fucking self." So he never asked me any questions, and it was live. And I always think fight fire with fire. So he said, "Last question, Gary." And I said, "Oh, here we go." And I knew he was going to do something because he was leading up to it the whole interview. He said, "What's it like to be married to a woman that everyone in the world wants to fuck?" Right. And I said, "Everyone except me." And we burst out laughing. And she burst out laughing, and it was like, "Fuck you," and all the audience burst out laughing. I said, "Thanks a lot, now go fuck yourself." I got up with it. But yeah, it's it's life, fun, and live it. Respect people, of course, and but I think we should laugh a lot more than there's a room for laughter these days. That all this headaches with people, everyone seems to be going at what you can get from someone back to the original conversation. What can you give to people rather than take from them? Be a better world if we try to do that.
no, absolutely, and I think people take themselves far too seriously. I'm very well known for being a bit of a clown and literally taking nothing seriously in the face of adversity. So it's I don't think it's a bad trait. It kind of makes me kind of almost bulletproof mentally. That's how I kind of see it. You know what I mean? So no, absolutely brilliant. I just want to touch on what sort of things you've got coming up before you kind of disappear. Anything you'd like to?
I'm going to direct something next, a movie called Upswing, which is a road movie. I'm trying to look at people like Malkovich, Christopher Walken. So it's a great movie. putting it together now. I'm more interested in directing. I like to be on. I like to create. I write a lot, but people don't really know much. But I write and coming from our background, I think we have similar backgrounds. When you've got no money and you grow up pretty lean, we're storytellers. You jokes. The only way you have fun. You don't have money to have fun, so all the boys practical. So it's a rich environment. At the time, you don't think it, but as I've got older, I wouldn't change where I'm from or the sense of humor I've got from them and all that. You find fun in the cheapest of ways, and so I write, and so I'm gonna direct this little thing, and then it's day by day. Who knows? I've got a couple of little podcasts going on because I think and I was happy when I heard you were doing this podcast and we spoke that you have a lot to say and people can learn. There's not a lot of people had your life, and I'm such a when you asked me to come on, I was absolutely thrilled to come on because I think your life is invaluable and your experiences can help a lot of people and yeah, you have a voice and it should be heard because there's a lot of people who are talking who shouldn't be heard. And people like you, I think, have a lot to teach people. You've been there, you've done it. And so I'm doing a couple of podcasts and we'll see, day by day.
I appreciate your words, Gary. That's for coming from you. I really, really appreciate that. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And yeah, so it's been an absolute pleasure. I'll have a quick chat with you off air in a second, but for now, look, thank you. And I look forward if you do pop up. You talked about maybe popping up Matlock way, catching you for a beer and a chat. And
I'll get you pissed, but there's no sparring. You've got about fucking £30 on me. You can.
Probably a bit more than that as well. Yeah. Right, nice one. Thank you very much, Gary.
God bless. Thanks, Benji.
Been a pleasure.